Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling completely drained, your thoughts tangled, and a vague sense of guilt you just can't shake? You replay the interaction over and over, trying to pinpoint what went wrong, but all you're left with is confusion and a sinking feeling in your stomach. It's a deeply unsettling experience, one that leaves you questioning your own perceptions and emotions. What if that feeling isn't just a coincidence or a sign of your own sensitivity? What if it's a signal, a warning flare sent up by your own mind, trying to alert you to a subtle but powerful force working against you? Could it be that you are, in fact, a target of emotional manipulation? This is where the ancient philosophy of Stoicism becomes incredibly relevant, not as a dusty historical concept, but as a vital and practical toolkit for modern life. Far from being a passive acceptance of whatever happens, true Stoicism is an active practice of discernment, a commitment to seeing the world with clear-eyed logic and protecting your inner virtue. The great Stoics like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius dedicated their lives to cultivating inner peace, integrity, and rational thought. They understood that our greatest possession is our own mind, and its freedom is worth defending above all else. A manipulator, whether they realize it or not, launches a direct assault on these very principles. They twist logic to create doubt, they exploit virtue to induce obligation, and they disrupt inner peace to foster dependency. Their tactics are designed to cloud your judgment and hijack your emotional state, making you easier to control. In this video, we are going to arm you with the wisdom of the ages to defend your mental sovereignty. We will journey through 25 specific red flags, clear signs of emotional manipulation that you can learn to spot. Each one is a modern application of an ancient insight, a way to use Stoic principles as a lens to see through the fog of toxic behavior. This isn't about becoming paranoid or cynical, it's about becoming empowered. It's about learning to distinguish genuine care from calculated control and reclaiming the peace of mind that is your birthright. By understanding these warning signs, you take the first crucial step toward guarding your inner citadel and ensuring that your emotions serve you, not someone else's hidden agenda. Our exploration begins with one of the most disorienting and powerful manipulation tactics, the love bomb and devalue cycle. This is not a simple case of someone being nice and then having a bad day. It is a calculated two-part process designed to hijack your emotional stability. It often starts with an intensity that can feel incredibly flattering. You meet someone and almost immediately they are showering you with what seems like unwavering admiration. The compliments are constant and profound, not just about your appearance, but about your intelligence, your character, your very essence. They want to spend every moment with you, texting you good morning and good night, making grand future plans after only knowing you for a short time. This is the love bombing phase, and it creates a powerful illusion of a perfect storybook connection. It feels like you've finally found the person who truly sees you, and the rush of validation is immense. But then, without any clear reason, the tone shifts dramatically. This is the pivot into the devaluation stage. The person who once placed you on a pedestal now begins to find subtle, then not so subtle, faults. The same qualities they praised become targets for criticism. Perhaps your independence, once called strong and inspiring, is now labeled distant and cold. They become distant themselves, withdrawing their attention and affection, leaving you confused and anxious. You find yourself walking on eggshells, desperately trying to figure out what you did wrong to lose that wonderful initial connection. The human mind is wired to seek patterns and restore equilibrium, so you will likely work tirelessly to regain their approval, to win back that incredible feeling of being adored. This creates a powerful psychological addiction, much like a gambler chasing a win. The intermittent reinforcement, the unpredictable return to the good phase, makes the addiction even stronger. You become trapped in a cycle, forever trying to recapture the high of the love bomb to escape the pain of the devaluation. From a Stoic perspective, this tactic is so effective because it directly targets a fundamental vulnerability, our craving for external validation. The Stoics, from Epictetus to Marcus Aurelius, consistently warned that basing our self-worth on the opinions and treatment of others is to build our house on sand. Our virtue, our character, our rational mind, these are the only things truly under our control, and thus the only proper foundation for our esteem. A manipulator, intuitively or intentionally, understands this. They offer a torrent of external validation in the love bomb phase, making you feel incredible, but they make it conditional. They hook your sense of self to their approval. Then, in the devalue phase, they withdraw that approval, causing your sense of self to siably. This undermines your proherses, your inner faculty of choice and judgment, making you dependent on them to feel good about yourself. It's a vicious assault on your inner citadel, convincing you to hand over the keys to your own peace of mind. The Stoic remedy is not to become cold or unfeeling, but to cultivate such a strong, internal sense of self-worth that the manipulative pendulum of praise and criticism simply loses its power to destabilize you. Moving from the emotional roller coaster of love bombing, we encounter a more insidious form of psychological warfare, gaslighting. This tactic is far more than simple lying or disagreement. It's a systematic and deliberate campaign to erode your confidence in your own mind. A gaslighter will flatly deny things they clearly said or did, insist that events you vividly remember never happened, or dismiss your feelings as an overreaction to a situation they describe in a completely different way. For instance, after a heated argument where they shouted cruel insults, they might later claim, "I never said that, you're being overly sensitive and imagining things. I was perfectly calm." Or if you confront them about breaking a promise, they might twist the narrative entirely. "You're remembering it wrong. What I actually said was..." And you agreed to it. The goal is not just to win an argument, but to make you question the very foundation of your experiences. The psychological impact of this is profound and deeply damaging. When your perception of reality is constantly challenged by someone you trust or care about, you begin to experience a corrosive self-doubt. You start to wonder if you are indeed too sensitive, if your memory is faulty, or if you're somehow losing your grip on what's real. This confusion creates a state of anxiety and dependency. You may feel you can no longer trust your own judgment, so you increasingly rely on the gaslighter to interpret events and tell you what is true. They become your arbiter of reality, which gives them immense power over your thoughts and emotions. It's a vicious cycle where the more you doubt yourself, the more control they gain. From a Stoic standpoint, gaslighting is a direct and brutal assault on our most vital human faculty, reason or logos. The Stoics believed that our ability to perceive the world accurately and to make rational judgments based on those perceptions is the cornerstone of virtue and a good life. It is our inner citadel, the command center from which we navigate the world. A gaslighter, in their attempt to distort your reality, is essentially trying to lay siege to that citadel. They are attacking your sovereign right to assess what is true and what is false. The Stoic response, therefore, is not to engage in a futile debate over their twisted facts, but to firmly and calmly reaffirm your trust in your own rational mind. This involves a disciplined practice of grounding yourself in objective observation. A Stoic might keep a private journal, noting down events and conversations as they happen to maintain a clear record. More importantly, they would practice the Stoic exercise of withholding assent from impressions that are clearly distorted. When a manipulator presents a false version of events, instead of immediately internalizing the confusion, a Stoic learns to pause and say to themselves, "This is the impression they are giving me. I know what I saw and heard. My perception is valid." It is an act of refusing to cede control of your inner world to another person. By trusting in your own capacity for reason, you reclaim the authority over your reality that the gaslighter is trying to steal. Another tactic that can leave you feeling profoundly disoriented is when a manipulator begins to project their own flaws directly onto you. This is more than simple hypocrisy. It's a psychological maneuver where they accuse you of the very behaviors, intentions, or negative traits that they themselves are demonstrating. For example, a person who is secretive and evasive might constantly question your whereabouts, insisting you must be hiding something. A colleague who consistently takes credit for shared work might loudly complain that others are stealing their ideas. In a romantic relationship, a partner who is emotionally distant or even unfaithful might bombard you with baseless accusations of infidelity, driven by their own guilt or insecurity. This strategy serves several purposes for the manipulator. Primarily, it's a powerful form of deflection. By launching a preemptive accusation, they shift the spotlight of scrutiny away from their own actions and onto you. Suddenly, you are the one placed on the defensive, forced to expend your energy proving your innocence instead of addressing their questionable behavior. This creates a thick fog of confusion, making it difficult to even identify the real issue at hand. Furthermore, when you are constantly accused of something you haven't done, it can trigger a deep-seated anxiety. You might start to overanalyze your own actions, wondering if you are somehow giving off signals that could be misinterpreted, effectively being trained to police your own normal behavior to avoid conflict. This phenomenon finds a powerful explanation in the wisdom of the Stoic teacher Epictetus. He famously taught that people are disturbed not by things but by the views they take of them. A manipulator who is projecting is essentially externalizing their own disturbed views. Their internal world is filled with jealousy, deceit, or insecurity, and instead of confronting these flaws within themselves, they cast them outwards like a shadow, perceiving these negative qualities in everyone around them, especially in their target. Their accusation is not a reflection of your character, it is a confession about the state of their own mind. They are showing you the very things that disturb their own peace. The Stoic response, therefore, is twofold and requires immense emotional discipline. First, you must refuse to internalize the false accusation. This means consciously separating their projection from your own self-perception. You recognize that their words are a mirror reflecting their inner turmoil, not a window revealing a truth about you. This is where the Stoic practice of self-awareness becomes your shield. By having a clear and honest understanding of your own intentions and actions, you can observe their accusations with a degree of detached curiosity rather than panic. You can calmly assess, is there any truth to this? And if the answer is a clear no, you can let the comment pass without allowing it to shake your foundation. The goal is not to win the argument by proving them wrong, but to protect your inner peace by refusing to accept a burden that is not yours to carry. You allow their projected shadow to fall to the ground rather than catching it and wearing it as your own. A particularly devastating red flag in the manipulator's playbook is the slow, methodical process of isolating you from your support system. This rarely happens overnight. It's a gradual erosion, like a constant drip of water that eventually wears away stone. It often begins with subtle criticisms disguised as concern. They might say something like, "I just worry about you when you're with Sarah. She seems to bring out a negative side of you," or "Your brother always seems to make you feel stressed. Are you sure that relationship is healthy for you?" These comments are framed as caring observations, planting seeds of doubt about the people you love and trust. Over time, these criticisms become more pronounced, shifting the blame onto your friends and family for any problems in your life. The next stage often involves creating drama or inconvenience whenever you plan to engage with others. They might become suddenly ill, have an emotional crisis, or pick a fight right before you're supposed to meet a friend. You find yourself constantly canceling plans or cutting visits short to attend to their needs. When you do manage to spend time with loved ones, you might return home to a cold shoulder or a barrage of questions designed to make you feel guilty for having enjoyed yourself. The manipulator will imply that your loyalty should lie solely with them, that your independent relationships are a betrayal or a sign that you don't care enough. The ultimate goal of this entire campaign is to make you solely dependent on them for emotional support, validation, and a sense of reality. By systematically severing your connections to the outside world, they ensure that their voice becomes the only one you hear, their perspective the only one you consider. This makes their control over your thoughts and feelings nearly absolute, as you have no external reference point to check their narrative against. This tactic strikes at the very heart of a core Stoic principle, the value of community. The Stoics were not hermits who advocated for a life of solitary isolation. Quite the opposite, they championed the concept of the cosmopolis, the idea that we are all citizens of a universal city, bound together by reason and a shared capacity for virtue. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor who ruled the known world, constantly reminded himself of his connection to others, writing that we are made for cooperation like feet, hands, and eyelids. Seneca wrote extensively about the importance of true friendship, describing a friend as a second self. For the Stoics, surrounding oneself with other virtuous, rational people was not a luxury, it was essential for living a good life. These relationships provide a mirror for our own character, a source of honest feedback, and a bulwark against our own errors in judgment. When a manipulator isolates you, they are directly assaulting this Stoic ideal. They are not just separating you from friends, they are cutting you off from the fellowship of the cosmopolis. They understand that your support system acts as a crucial reality check. A good friend can offer an outside perspective saying, "The way he treated you in that situation wasn't right," or "That doesn't sound like the you I know." This external viewpoint is a powerful antidote to the distorted reality the manipulator is trying to create. By removing these voices, the manipulator effectively dims the lights in your inner citadel, making it harder for you to see clearly and defend your rational mind. The Stoic defense, therefore, is to consciously and courageously nurture your connections to the rational community. It means recognizing the immense value of these relationships not as optional extras, but as vital components of your mental and ethical fortress. Protecting these bonds, even when it's difficult, is an act of Stoic resilience. It is a declaration that your judgment is reinforced by the wisdom and care of others, making you far less vulnerable to the corrosive influence of a single, controlling individual. Now we come to a red flag that can be especially confusing because it often masquerades as vulnerability, the pattern of constant victimhood and playing the martyr. You know this person. In their telling, they are always the one wronged by a cruel boss, betrayed by disloyal friends, and misunderstood by a cold world. Every story, no matter how minor, is framed to highlight their suffering at the hands of others. If you try to offer a different perspective or suggest they might have some agency in the situation, you are immediately cast as another villain in their ongoing drama, accused of not being supportive or taking the other person's side. This is not genuine sharing of a hardship. It is a sustained identity of helplessness designed to evoke a specific reaction from you. The psychological hook here is powerful because it targets our innate desire to help and protect, our rescuer instinct. When someone presents themselves as perpetually suffering, especially if they imply you are their only source of comfort, it creates a heavy sense of obligation. You start to feel responsible for their emotional state. You might cancel your own plans to console them after a difficult day. You might pour your own energy into solving their problems, and you might even begin to neglect your own needs because their crisis always seems more urgent. This dynamic forces you into the role of a caretaker, constantly trying to fix things for someone who, paradoxically, never gets better. Your compassion becomes the very fuel that powers the cycle of their manipulation, draining you while keeping them firmly at the center of your attention. This behavior stands in direct opposition to one of the most fundamental Stoic principles, the dichotomy of control. Epictetus drew a clear line between what is within our power, our own judgments, impulses, desires, and aversions, and what is not, everything else, including our reputation, our wealth, and the actions of other people. A Stoic strives to focus their effort exclusively on what they can control, which is their own character and their responses to life's events. The perpetual victim does the exact opposite. They externalize all control, insisting that their happiness, their peace, and their entire well-being are determined solely by external forces and other people. They surrender their own power of choice, their proherses, and then demand that others use their power to make things right for them. When you engage with this dynamic, you are inadvertently endorsing their flawed worldview. By rushing in to fix their problems, you are confirming their belief that they are helpless and that salvation must come from outside. The Stoic approach is not to be cold or unsympathetic, but to offer help that empowers rather than enables. This might mean listening with empathy, but then gently guiding the conversation back to what is within their control. Instead of saying, "Let me talk to your boss for you," a Stoic-influenced response might be, "That sounds incredibly frustrating." What do you think your options are for how you might respond to this? This shifts the responsibility for action back to where it rightly belongs, with them. It respects their capacity for reason and resilience. Protecting your own peace means recognizing that you cannot carry another person's emotional burdens for them, especially when they refuse to carry them themselves. Your primary responsibility is to guard your own inner citadel, and that includes not allowing your virtue of compassion to be weaponized into a tool for your own manipulation. Another tactic that can make you feel deeply responsible for someone else's emotional state is the manipulative use of your own feelings as a form of blackmail. This goes beyond simple guilt tripping. It's a targeted strategy where the manipulator skillfully wields your deepest emotions, love, compassion, fear of abandonment, as tools to get what they want. The phrases are often disarmingly simple yet incredibly potent. "If you really loved me, you would do this for me." Or, "It causes me so much anxiety when you spend time with those people." Or, "A good friend wouldn't hesitate to help no matter what." These statements are not honest expressions of need. They are emotional landmines designed to trigger an automatic response. The mechanism of this manipulation is deeply psychological. It creates a false equation in your mind, linking your refusal of a specific demand to a fundamental failure of your character or a betrayal of the relationship itself. You are no longer simply saying no to a request. You are, according to their framing, proving that you are unloving, uncaring, or cruel. This immediately puts you on the defensive, forcing you to prove your love or your loyalty by capitulating to their wishes. The result is a pervasive sense of obligation and profound confusion. Your own healthy boundaries start to feel like evidence of your inadequacy, and the manipulator's distress becomes the most important problem to solve, overshadowing your own well-being. You become trapped in a cycle where your finest qualities, your capacity for love, your empathy, are systematically turned into instruments of your own control. This form of emotional blackmail represents a direct assault on a core Stoic objective, the management of our passions or pathos. It is crucial to clarify that the Stoic ideal of apatheia is not about becoming apathetic or emotionless. Rather, it signifies a state of freedom from being overpowered by destructive, irrational emotions that cloud judgment. The Stoic sage experiences feelings, but they are measured, reasoned responses to events, not turbulent storms that sweep them into actions they later regret. A manipulator who engages in emotional blackmail is attempting to do the exact opposite. They are trying to trigger a pathos within you, an overwhelming wave of guilt or fear, precisely so that you will be controlled by it and act against your own better judgment. The Stoic defense, therefore, lies in the disciplined practice of separating your reasoned choices from the emotional hooks being set. When faced with a statement like, "If you loved me, you would do this," the Stoic response is not to deny the emotion of love, but to calmly observe the faulty logic of the proposition. You can acknowledge the feeling while rejecting the coercion. The practice involves pausing before reacting, creating a moment of space between the emotional trigger and your response. In that space, you can ask yourself Stoic questions. Is this demand aligned with virtue? Is my refusal actually a sign of a lack of love, or is it a necessary act of upholding my integrity? By refusing to let the manipulator's narrative define the meaning of your emotions, you reclaim your inner authority. You learn to honor your love or your compassion by acting from a place of rational choice, not from a place of emotional panic or manufactured obligation. This is how you achieve the freedom the Stoics valued above all else, the freedom to act according to your own nature and reason, not as a puppet jerked by the strings of someone else's emotional theatrics. Now we turn to a manipulation tactic that weaponizes silence itself, an absence that can feel louder and more punishing than any shouting match, the silent treatment. This is not the healthy, temporary space someone might need to cool down after an argument. This is a calculated, protracted withdrawal of communication used explicitly as a form of punishment and control. The shift is often abrupt and bewildering. One moment you're engaging normally, and the next you are met with a wall of silence. Your texts go unanswered, your questions are met with a blank stare or turned shoulder, and your presence is treated as if you are invisible. This void of interaction creates a powerful vacuum of anxiety. The natural human instinct is to seek connection and resolution, so your mind will frantically scramble to fill that silence, replaying your last interaction again and again, searching for some minor offense you might have committed. You find yourself apologizing for things you aren't even sure you did, making concessions and bending over backwards in a desperate attempt to restore communication and end the unbearable tension. The manipulator says nothing, yet they force you to do all the work, effectively training you to avoid any behavior that might trigger their withdrawal. From a Stoic point of view, the silent treatment presents a profound test of your inner resilience, a direct challenge to your understanding of what is truly within your power. The Stoics, especially Epictetus, drew an unshakable line between what is ours, our thoughts, our judgments, our actions, and what is not, the actions, words, and feelings of other people. Another person's decision to speak or to remain silent falls squarely into that second category. It is an external event completely outside your control. When you beg, plead, or dramatically alter your behavior to coax someone out of silence, you are essentially trying to control the uncontrollable. You are pouring your precious energy into a task that is fundamentally impossible, guaranteeing your own frustration and exhaustion. The manipulator's power in this situation derives entirely from your belief that you are responsible for their behavior and that you must be the one to fix it. The Stoic response, therefore, is to calmly refuse to play the game. This does not mean becoming cold or retaliating with silence of your own. It means redirecting your focus inward to the one place where you have absolute sovereignty, your own mind. Instead of anxiously pacing the perimeter of your inner citadel, worrying about the siege engine of silence outside, you turn your attention to fortifying the walls within. You acknowledge the other person's silence for what it is, their choice, and you consciously choose not to let that choice dictate your inner state. You continue with your life, you maintain your own peace, and you act with virtue according to your own principles, regardless of their lack of response. This might involve simply going about your daily routine, engaging in productive work, or spending time with other people who value open communication. By demonstrating that their tactic cannot rob you of your equanimity, you disarm it of its power. You show that your sense of worth and your peace of mind are not contingent on their acknowledgement or approval. In doing so, you reclaim the control they are trying to seize, proving that your inner fortress is stronger than any silent siege. Perhaps one of the most exhausting forms of manipulation is the maddening experience of moving goalposts. You work tirelessly to meet a standard that has been set, only to find that the moment you achieve it, the standard itself has shifted, leaving you once again falling short. For example, you might take on extra projects at work to meet a manipulative boss's demand for greater productivity. And when you succeed, the new expectation becomes working on weekends without additional pay, framed as a test of your commitment to the team. In a personal relationship, a partner might criticize you for not being attentive enough, so you begin planning regular date night, checking in frequently only to be told you are now being clingy and suffocating. The rules of the game are constantly changing, and you are never given the rulebook. The underlying message is always the same: you are not enough. This engineered state of perpetual striving and inevitable failure is designed to keep you in a subordinate position, forever trying to earn a validation that is permanently out of reach. The psychological toll of this tactic is a deep and corrosive sense of inadequacy. Because the target is always moving, you begin to internalize the belief that the problem must be you. You reason that if you were just smarter, faster, or more perceptive, you would be able to anticipate the next shift and finally succeed. This traps you in a cycle of self-blame and hyper-vigilance, where you are constantly scanning for clues about what will be demanded of you next. Your entire focus becomes external, fixated on pleasing the manipulator, which systematically erodes your confidence and your connection to your own needs and desires. You are kept permanently off balance, your energy drained in a futile race you can never win. This manipulation strategy stands in stark opposition to a fundamental Stoic ideal, the pursuit of virtue as a stable internal goal. The Stoics taught that the only true good is an excellent character acting with wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Unlike external targets like wealth, fame, or the approval of others, which are fickle and ultimately outside our control, virtue is something we can cultivate within ourselves regardless of circumstances. A Stoic finds satisfaction not in achieving a specific outcome, but in the quality of their effort and the rightness of their intention. The goal is to act virtuously in this moment, the result is secondary. A manipulator who moves the goalposts understands this dichotomy intuitively and seeks to exploit it. They want to keep you chasing external, unstable targets, their approval, their shifting standards, because this ensures you will never look inward to find your own source of worth. They create a world where your value is always conditional upon your performance in their impossible game. The Stoic defense is to consciously redirect your energy from their external, moving targets to your own internal, stable one. Instead of asking, "What do I need to do to make them happy?" you learn to ask, "How can I act with integrity and wisdom in this situation?" The focus shifts from an uncontrollable outcome to a controllable action. Did you act with honesty? Did you treat others fairly? Did you face a challenge with courage? If the answer is yes, then you have succeeded, regardless of whether the manipulator acknowledges it or not. This realignment is profoundly liberating. It means you can stop running their race and start walking your own path, finding deep and lasting satisfaction in the integrity of your own character, a goal that no one can ever move. Another deeply unsettling tactic in the manipulator's arsenal is known as triangulation, a strategy that deliberately introduces a third party into your private dynamic to destabilize you. Imagine your partner frequently mentioning a coworker, not in a casual way but with a tone of clear admiration. "Mark is just so understanding. He always knows exactly what to say," they might remark, or "It's refreshing to talk to someone as easygoing as Sarah. I wish things weren't so complicated sometimes." These comments are carefully placed darts designed to create a silent, poisonous comparison. The third party can be almost anyone: an ex-partner described as the one who got away, a friend who supposedly never causes any drama, or even a complete stranger they observed in a cafe. The goal is not to genuinely compliment the other person, but to implicitly criticize you, fostering a sense of insecurity, jealousy, and competition for the manipulator's favor. The psychological impact of this is a profound erosion of your sense of security and self-worth. You are suddenly thrust into a game you never agreed to play, where you are constantly measured against an invisible and likely idealized competitor. Your mind becomes preoccupied with questions that have no good answers. Why can't I be more like Mark? What am I doing wrong? Do they wish they were with Sarah instead? This internal noise drowns out your own sense of self. You may find yourself trying to mimic the qualities of this imagined rival or going to excessive lengths to prove your own value, all in a desperate bid to win back your position as the favored one. The manipulator, by holding up this mirror of unfavorable comparison, effectively makes you an enemy to yourself, turning your energy inward in a destructive cycle of self-doubt rather than outward toward the true source of the problem. This insidious tactic finds its perfect antidote in the core Stoic rejection of comparison. Marcus Aurelius, in his private journal, constantly reminded himself of the futility of looking sideways at others. He wrote how much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does or thinks, but only to what he does himself, that it may be just and pure. For the Stoics, the only measure of a person is their own virtue, their wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline. To compare your wealth, your social standing, or your popularity to another's is to chase phantoms, as these external things are not true goods and are ultimately outside your control. Your sole task is to tend to the garden of your own character. A manipulator who uses triangulation understands this spiritual truth on an intuitive level and seeks to corrupt it. They are actively trying to drag you out of your own inner citadel and into the chaotic marketplace of external validation and social comparison. They want to trigger envy, a passion the Stoics considered a form of mental slavery, because an envious person is forever dependent on others for their sense of worth. By making you feel that you are in a race against a ghost, they ensure you are never truly present with yourself, never content with your own progress. The Stoic defense, then, is a conscious and deliberate refusal to enter the arena of comparison. When faced with an unfavorable comparison, the disciplined response is to gently guide your focus back to your own path. Ask yourself not, how do I measure up to this other person, but rather, am I acting in accordance with my nature? Am I being the best version of myself right now? This shift in focus is an act of reclaiming your sovereignty. You acknowledge the manipulator's comment for what it is, an attempt to provoke you, and you choose with calm authority to remain within the walls of your own character, where your true worth resides, independent of anyone else's invented competition. Another draining experience is the sensation of a conversation spinning in circles, going nowhere no matter how hard you try to steer it toward a resolution. This is the hallmark of word salad and circular logic. You bring up a specific concern, something clear and tangible, and the response you receive is a torrent of confusing, vague, or completely unrelated information. The manipulator might suddenly change the subject, bring up a past grievance from years ago that has no bearing on the current issue, or respond to your direct question with another question. If you painstakingly circle back to your original point, they might simply deny that it was ever the topic or accuse you of being fixated and unable to let things go. The content of the discussion becomes a blur, and you find yourself mentally exhausted, your thoughts tangled, struggling just to remember what you were initially trying to address. The goal here is not to communicate or solve a problem. It is to create such cognitive overload that you eventually surrender. You give up out of sheer frustration, and the manipulator wins by ensuring the real issue is never actually confronted. This tactic is a direct assault on the very foundation of rational discourse, which the Stoics held in the highest regard. They viewed clear, honest, and concise speech as an essential component of a virtuous life. Seneca wrote extensively about the importance of speaking with purpose and listening with the intent to understand, not merely to reply. For the Stoics, language was the primary tool of logos, the rational principle that orders the universe and connects human beings. To misuse language, to twist it into a weapon of confusion rather than a bridge of understanding, is to act against nature itself. A manipulator who engages in word salad is not just being difficult, they are actively corrupting the tool of reason to prevent any mutual discovery of truth. They create a fog where logic cannot penetrate, ensuring that a good faith exchange is impossible. The Stoic response to this deliberate irrationality is not to try harder to break through the fog, but to recognize the futility of the endeavor and consciously disengage. This is an application of the dichotomy of control. You can control your own speech, striving for clarity and honesty. You can control your effort to engage in a productive dialogue. But you cannot control whether the other person chooses to participate in good faith. When it becomes evident that you are not in a conversation, but are instead being subjected to a performance designed to confuse and exhaust you, the most virtuous action is to stop participating. This disengagement is not an admission of defeat. It is a strategic decision to cease supplying energy to a pointless and destructive cycle. You might calmly state, "I can see we're not able to discuss this productively right now. I'm going to step away," and then physically remove yourself from the situation. By doing so, you protect your own mental clarity and refuse to allow your capacity for reason to be used as a weapon against you. You uphold the Stoic value of truthful communication by refusing to entertain its deliberate corruption. This next red flag often arrives with a smile and a laugh, making it one of the most socially acceptable yet deeply corrosive forms of manipulation, the insult disguised as a joke. On the surface, it seems like harmless teasing, but the content is consistently aimed at your insecurities or vulnerabilities. It could be a recurring funny comment about your intelligence, your appearance, or a past mistake you've made. The moment you show any sign of hurt or annoyance, the tone instantly shifts. The manipulator acts wounded and surprised, accusing you of being unable to take a joke, of having no sense of humor, or of being overly sensitive. They might say something like, "I was just kidding, can't you tell when someone's being playful? You're so serious all the time." This clever reversal puts you in a lose-lose situation. If you protest, you confirm their accusation that you are thin-skinned and humorless. If you stay silent and force a smile, you silently endure the insult, allowing your boundaries to be trampled. This dynamic keeps you perpetually off balance, never sure if you are rightly defending your dignity or irrationally overreacting. What makes this tactic so effective is its built-in shield of plausible deniability. The manipulator can always retreat behind the curtain of just joking, making it nearly impossible to address the underlying hostility directly. Any attempt to have a serious conversation about how their words make you feel is immediately dismissed as you misunderstanding their innocent intent. This systematic invalidation of your feelings is profoundly damaging. It teaches you to distrust your own emotional responses. You start to wonder, maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe I should just learn to laugh at myself more. Over time, you become complicit in your own mistreatment, silencing the inner voice that rightly tells you when a line has been crossed. Your sense of reality becomes warped, as the clear signal of your pain is constantly reinterpreted by the manipulator as a character flaw on your part. This behavior stands in stark contrast to the Stoic virtue of justice, which encompasses far more than legal fairness. For the Stoics, justice meant living with integrity, honoring our duties to others, and treating every human being with the fundamental respect they deserve as rational creatures. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about the importance of dealing with people honestly and kindly, viewing malice and deceit as injuries to the soul of the person who holds them. True humor, from a Stoic perspective, would never seek to diminish another person's dignity. It might playfully highlight universal human foibles or laugh at life's absurdities, but it would not target an individual's insecurities for a cheap laugh. A joke that consistently lands as an insult reveals a character that finds pleasure in another's discomfort, which is a clear departure from virtue. The Stoic defense against this tactic is not to become a humorless scold, but to develop the clarity and courage to call out the discrepancy between the action and the claimed intent. This requires applying the discipline of assent, pausing before automatically accepting the manipulator's framing of the event. Instead of getting drawn into a debate about whether you have a sense of humor, you can calmly and clearly describe the observable facts. You might respond by saying, "When you make a comment about my weight and then call it a joke, the result is that I feel belittled. Whether you intend it or not, the impact is hurtful." This statement does not attack their character, it simply asserts the truth of your experience. It shifts the focus from your alleged sensitivity to the actual consequence of their words. By refusing to laugh along and by stating the effect plainly, you remove their shield of deniability. You act with justice toward yourself by honoring your own feelings, and you act with justice toward them by offering a clear, rational account of what is happening. This reclaims the high ground of virtuous communication, exposing the cruelty hidden beneath the laughter without resorting to cruelty yourself. Now we arrive at a red flag that speaks volumes about a person's character through a simple, yet profoundly telling absence: the sincere apology. A manipulator has a deeply troubled relationship with the words "I'm sorry." You will find that they either refuse to apologize outright, or they offer a hollow substitute that sounds like an apology but carries none of its weight or meaning. The most common of these is the infamous non-apology, such as "I'm sorry you feel that way," or "I'm sorry if you took it the wrong way." Notice how the blame is subtly shifted onto you. The issue is no longer their action, but your reaction to it. Your feelings become the problem, not their behavior. Alternatively, they might offer a theatrical, seemingly heartfelt apology, only to turn around and commit the exact same offense shortly after. This reveals that the apology was not an admission of wrongdoing and a commitment to change, but a tactical maneuver to placate you and end the conflict, effectively resetting the clock until the next transgression. In every case, the core component is missing: a genuine accountability. This refusal to take ownership has a corrosive effect on any relationship. It creates a one-way street where you are always the one expected to understand, to forgive, and to adjust, while they remain unchanging and unaccountable. Over time, this imbalance teaches you that your pain is less important than their comfort. You learn to swallow your hurt and minimize your needs because expressing them leads only to a dead end of deflection and blame. This dynamic systematically erodes your sense of self-worth, as you are repeatedly sent the message that your experiences are not valid enough to warrant a simple, honest acknowledgement of responsibility from the person who caused them. This pattern stands in direct opposition to the Stoic view of error and growth, which places immense value on the act of sincere self-correction. The Stoics saw life as a continuous journey of moral and intellectual progress. Seneca, in his moral letters, frequently emphasized the importance of daily self-examination. He advised reviewing one's actions each evening, asking, "What bad habit have I cured today? What fault have I resisted? In what respect am I better?" Central to this practice is the courage to frankly admit one's mistakes. For the Stoics, recognizing an error is not a sign of weakness. It is the very first step toward wisdom and strength. It is an act of integrity, a commitment to aligning one's actions with virtue. A person who cannot or will not apologize is essentially refusing to engage in this fundamental human task of growth. They are choosing the comfort of their own self-image over the hard work of becoming a better person. When a manipulator offers a non-apology, they are performing a clever but ultimately shallow pantomime of virtue. They want the social credit associated with saying sorry without undergoing the internal transformation that a true apology requires. The Stoic response to this is to see the act for what it is, a refusal to grow, and to adjust your expectations accordingly. You cannot force another person to embrace accountability. That is a choice only they can make, lying firmly outside your control. What is within your control is your own commitment to integrity. This means honoring your own experience by refusing to accept a counterfeit apology as a resolution. It might mean calmly stating, "Thank you for saying that, but an apology that blames my feelings doesn't address the action that caused them." This is not about being punitive, it is about upholding a standard of honest communication. By doing so, you protect your own moral compass and you refuse to enable their avoidance. You demonstrate through your own actions what true accountability looks like, thereby reclaiming the integrity that their behavior seeks to undermine. Perhaps the most insidious aspect of emotional manipulation is the way it can contort your most reasonable and human reactions into evidence of your own instability. This red flag involves a manipulator systematically pathologizing your normal, healthy responses, reframing your boundaries as tyranny and your pain as hysteria. For instance, after enduring repeated disrespect, you might finally state a clear limit. "I need you to stop making those kinds of comments about my family." Instead of acknowledging your request, the manipulator might recoil in feigned shock and say, "You're so controlling, you're trying to dictate what I can and can't say. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells around you." In this moment, your act of self-preservation is twisted into an act of aggression. Similarly, if you express hurt after a betrayal, you might be met with, "You're completely overreacting. It wasn't that big of a deal, you're being so dramatic." The goal is to make you feel crazy for having feelings and needs that any sane person would have. It's a specialized form of gaslighting that targets not just your memory of events, but the very validity of your emotional landscape. The psychological damage this causes is profound. When your attempts to protect yourself are consistently labeled as problematic, you enter a state of profound cognitive dissonance. Your internal compass, which rightly signals hurt or the need for a boundary, is constantly overridden by an external narrative that insists your compass is broken. You begin to second-guess every emotional impulse. You might think, "Is it controlling to ask for basic respect? Am I really too sensitive? Maybe I am the problem." This internal conflict is exhausting and deeply disorienting. It forces you to abandon trust in your own perceptions and to outsource the definition of normal to the very person who is harming you. Your natural, healthy reactions become a source of shame and confusion, making you easier to control because you no longer believe in your own right to feel or to set limits. From a Stoic perspective, this tactic is a direct and brutal assault on your hegemonikon, your ruling faculty or inner citadel. The Stoics believed that our capacity for rational judgment is our most sacred possession. It is the command center from which we assess impressions from the outside world and decide how to respond. A healthy citadel can distinguish between a true threat and a false alarm, between a just grievance and an irrational whim. The manipulator who calls you crazy for normal reactions is in effect launching a psychological siege on that citadel. They are firing volleys of distorted impressions over the walls, trying to create chaos within your command center and make you doubt the competence of your own garrison. They want you to throw open the gates and surrender your judgment to them. This is precisely why the Stoics placed such emphasis on daily mental preparation, a practice often called morning meditation or premeditation. Before the day begins, a practitioner of Stoicism doesn't just rush into the fray. They take quiet time to sit with their mind and fortify their inner citadel. They anticipate the challenges they might face, including the potential for encountering distorted narratives and manipulative language. A key part of this preparation is to reaffirm core Stoic principles. You might remind yourself, "My feelings are valid signals, my boundaries are necessary for my integrity." Another person's attempt to pathologize these things is a reflection of their own inability to respect them, not a diagnosis of my character. This mental rehearsal is like drilling your troops. When the manipulator later fires their verbal arrow, you're so controlling for setting that boundary, you are not caught off guard. The thought strikes the well-prepared walls of your citadel and fails to penetrate. Instead of being thrown into confusion, you have a pre-rehearsed, rational response within yourself. This is a predictable tactic. My boundary is reasonable. Their accusation is a strategy, not a truth. This practice doesn't make you invulnerable to pain, but it makes you vastly less susceptible to having your core sense of judgment dismantled. It allows you to hold fast to the knowledge that your reactions are sane, even when someone is desperately trying to convince you otherwise. This profound disconnect between words and actions is one of the most reliable indicators of a manipulative character. You experience it as a constant, low-grade hum of confusion. They speak with such conviction about their loyalty, their commitment, their deep affection for you, yet their behavior tells a completely different story. They promise unwavering support when you face a challenge, but the moment you actually need a listening ear or a helping hand, they are mysteriously unavailable. Their phone goes straight to voicemail, or they have a sudden, more pressing obligation. They lavish you with poetic words about love and respect, yet in their daily interactions, they show contempt through dismissive body language, broken promises, and a blatant disregard for your feelings and time. This isn't just about human fallibility or the occasional mistake. It's a consistent pattern where their deeds actively contradict their declarations. The psychological impact of this inconsistency is a state of chronic cognitive dissonance. Your mind struggles to hold two conflicting realities at once: the comforting picture they paint with their words and the painful evidence presented by their actions. To resolve the tension, you might find yourself making elaborate excuses for them. You think, well, they said they cared, so they must. Maybe they're just really stressed right now. Maybe I'm expecting too much. You end up bending your own perception of reality to fit their narrative, because the alternative, accepting that their words are empty, is too painful to confront. This internal conflict drains your mental energy and keeps you trapped in a cycle of hope and disappointment, always waiting for the person they claim to be to finally appear. This red flag cuts to the very heart of Stoic ethics, which places paramount importance on the unity of belief and action. The Stoics judged a person's character not by their eloquent speeches or their lofty intentions, but solely by their consistent deeds. Epictetus, who began his life as a slave, had a particularly low tolerance for empty philosophizing. He famously said, "If you didn't learn these things in order to demonstrate them in practice, what did you learn them for?" He argued that proclaiming virtue without living it was not just useless, but hypocritical and shameful. Marcus Aurelius, in the private solitude of his journal, constantly reinforced this idea, writing, "Stop talking about what the good man is like and just be one." For the Stoics, virtue was not an abstract concept to be debated. It was a concrete reality to be enacted through every choice, every interaction, every moment of the day. Therefore, when you observe a persistent gap between someone's words and their actions, you are witnessing a fundamental failure of character from a Stoic standpoint. The manipulator's words are a performance, a carefully constructed facade designed to elicit a certain response from you: trust, loyalty, affection. But their actions reveal their true priorities, which are invariably self-serving. They are not striving for virtue, they are practicing the art of impression management. The Stoic response to this discrepancy is not to confront them with their hypocrisy, which they will likely deny or explain away, but to quietly and firmly adjust your own expectations. You must learn to deafen your ears to their promises and train your eyes to see only their behavior. Your trust should be earned not through poetic language or grand declarations, but through the quiet, cumulative evidence of reliable, respectful, and consistent conduct. By aligning your judgment with the Stoic standard of valuing action over rhetoric, you protect yourself from the emotional whiplash of their contradictions. You grant power only to what is real and demonstrable, effectively neutralizing one of the manipulator's most potent tools, the seductive but ultimately empty power of words. There is a particular kind of weariness that has nothing to do with physical exertion, a deep-seated exhaustion that seems to seep into your bones after an interaction with a certain person. You hang up the phone or walk away from the conversation feeling not just tired but emotionally hollowed out, as if your internal reserves have been systematically siphoned away. This isn't the pleasant fatigue that follows a productive day or a hearty laugh with friends. It's a heavy, anxious depletion, often accompanied by a sense of dread about the next time you'll have to engage with them. You might find yourself needing to lie down or seeking solitude just to process the mental toll and regain a sense of equilibrium. This palpable feeling of being drained is one of the most significant yet often overlooked red flags of emotional manipulation. It is your entire being, your mind, your body, your spirit sending you an urgent signal that something is profoundly wrong. Now, contrast this with the feeling you have after spending time with someone who is genuinely supportive, someone who embodies the Stoic ideal of virtue. After a conversation with a true friend, you feel uplifted, understood, and perhaps even energized. There is a sense of mutual respect, a free exchange of ideas without hidden agendas, and an absence of the need to constantly monitor your words or defend your reality. Your peace of mind remains intact or is even enhanced. The difference between these two experiences is not a minor detail. It is the fundamental distinction between a relationship that nourishes your inner citadel and one that actively besieges it. That feeling of depletion is the direct cost of the psychological labor you are forced to perform. The constant vigilance, the decoding of mixed messages, the suppression of your own needs, and the emotional gymnastics required to navigate the manipulator's unstable terrain. Your energy is being extracted to fuel their need for control, leaving you with less vitality for your own life and pursuits. This experience connects directly to the highest goal of Stoic practice, the achievement of tranquility or ataraxia. The Stoics weren't seeking a blank, emotionless state, but a profound and unshakable peace of mind, a clarity of judgment that remains steady amidst the chaos of external events. It is the condition of a soul that is orderly and harmonious, free from the turbulent passions of fear, anxiety, and craving. Your natural state, when you're living in accordance with your nature and reason, is one of calm agency. A manipulative relationship does the exact opposite. It is an engine specifically designed to manufacture internal chaos. It actively destroys the very tranquility that Stoicism aims to build. Therefore, if a relationship consistently, predictably leaves you feeling anxious, drained, and stripped of your peace, it is, by the strictest Stoic definition, not a virtuous or healthy relationship. It is an obstacle to your own progress toward eudaimonia, a flourishing life. Evaluating your relationships through this lens of energetic cost versus benefit is not selfish. It is a necessary act of philosophical hygiene. Marcus Aurelius advised, the first rule is to keep an untroubled spirit. The second is to look things in the face and know them for what they are. Applying this wisdom means having the courage to look clearly at the aftermath of your interactions. You must honestly ask yourself, does my spirit feel troubled or untroubled after engaging with this person? Does this connection help me see things for what they are, or does it cloud my perception? When the cost consistently outweighs any conceivable benefit, when a relationship functions as a persistent drain on your most precious internal resources, your peace and your energy, the Stoic course of action is clear. It requires a courageous re-evaluation of that relationship's place in your life. This doesn't always mean a dramatic final cut. It could mean firmly establishing new boundaries, significantly reducing your exposure, or changing the nature of your interactions. But it always means prioritizing the defense of your inner citadel, recognizing that your capacity for tranquility is not a luxury to be sacrificed, but the very foundation upon which a good life is built. Now we come to a tactic that thrives on pressure and isolation, a combination that can be incredibly effective at clouding your judgment, the creation of a false sense of urgency or the demand for secrecy. This often begins with a sudden, high-pressure demand that requires an immediate answer. A partner might declare they need to move in together right away, insisting, "If we don't do this now, we'll lose our chance forever." Or a new business associate might pressure you to sign a contract within hours, warning that the offer will vanish if you take time to think. This manufactured crisis is designed to trigger a panic response, activating your fight or flight instincts and effectively shutting down the more deliberate, rational parts of your brain. When you're in a state of anxiety, you are far more likely to agree to things you would normally question, simply to relieve the intense pressure. Closely related is the insistence on secrecy. A manipulator might say something like, "What we have is so special, it's best if we keep it just between us for now," or "Your family and friends wouldn't understand our connection. They'd just try to break us up." This request to conceal the relationship or certain aspects of it from your support network serves a dual purpose. First, it further heightens the sense of a unique, high-stakes bond, making you feel like you and the manipulator are a team against the world. Second, and more crucially, it strategically isolates you from the very people who could offer a sober second thought. It prevents you from running the situation by a trusted friend who might spot the red flags you're too emotionally involved to see. By combining urgency with secrecy, the manipulator constructs a perfect trap where you feel compelled to act quickly and have no safe outlet to question whether you should act at all. This entire strategy is a direct and calculated assault on a core Stoic practice, the crucial pause between an impression and an action. Epictetus taught that our power lies not in controlling external events, but in our ability to control our judgments about them and our subsequent responses. He advised that when faced with any impression, especially a disturbing one, we must learn to say, "Wait, let me see what this is and what it means." This deliberate pause is the birthplace of rational choice. It is the space where we can consider consequences, weigh options, and consult our principles before committing to a course of action. The Stoics called this the discipline of assent, and it is the foundation of a virtuous life. A manipulator who creates urgency understands this power and seeks to destroy it. They cannot afford to give you time to think because clear thinking is their greatest enemy. Their goal is to force a reaction, not to allow a reasoned response. Furthermore, the demand for secrecy runs contrary to the Stoic value of living an open and examined life in community with others. Seneca frequently wrote about the importance of seeking counsel from wise and virtuous friends, viewing such relationships as a mirror that helps us see ourselves more clearly. He believed that we should choose a moral guide, someone whose judgment we trust, and willingly submit our plans to their scrutiny. This act is not a sign of weakness, but of strength and a commitment to truth. A manipulator's insistence on secrecy is an attempt to break this vital feedback loop. They know that the light of an outside perspective would expose the flaws in their pressure campaign. The Stoic defense, therefore, is to consciously reintroduce that pause and that light, no matter how much pressure is applied. When faced with an urgent demand, the most powerful thing you can do is to slow down. A simple, calm statement like, "I don't make important decisions under pressure. I need time to think about this," reclaims your sovereignty. It is a declaration that your inner citadel operates on your timetable, not theirs. Similarly, any request for secrecy, especially in a new or intense relationship, should be seen as a major warning. A healthy bond welcomes the scrutiny of loved ones, only a questionable one demands to be hidden. By insisting on your right to consult your support system, you are not being disloyal to the manipulator. you are being loyal to your own well-being and to the Stoic ideal of living rationally and openly. Another clear sign of emotional manipulation is when your attempts to establish a healthy boundary are met not with respect, but with a dramatic reinterpretation of your words as a hostile act. You might express a simple, reasonable need, such as, "I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, I need to take this evening for myself to recharge," or "I'm not comfortable discussing that topic right now." Instead of acknowledging your request, the manipulator immediately personalizes it, framing it as a profound rejection or an attack on them. Their response might be a wounded, "So you don't want to spend time with me, I guess I'm just a burden," or an accusatory, "Why are you pushing me away? What have I done wrong?" The underlying message is that your act of self-care is in fact an act of aggression against them. This clever inversion punishes you for tending to your own well-being, making you feel guilty and selfish for having normal human needs. The consequence is that you start to associate setting a limit with causing pain and conflict, leading you to abandon your boundaries to avoid the emotional fallout. This tactic is so effective because it exploits our deep-seated need for connection and our aversion to being perceived as cruel or unloving. The manipulator skillfully turns your virtue, the ability to know your limits and communicate them honestly, into a weapon against you. You find yourself in an impossible position. Either you uphold your boundary and endure the accusation of being hurtful, or you surrender your boundary to prove your care, effectively rewarding the manipulative behavior. Over time, this trains you to ignore your own internal signals of fatigue and overwhelm, silencing the very instincts that are designed to protect your mental and emotional health. Your well-being becomes secondary to managing the manipulator's distorted perception of your intentions, creating a dynamic where you are constantly responsible for their emotional state at the expense of your own. From a Stoic standpoint, the act of setting a boundary is a fundamental and practical application of the dichotomy of control. It is the conscious process of defining what is truly yours to manage: your time, your energy, your personal space, your emotional commitments, and respectfully acknowledging that another person's reaction to those limits falls outside your command. When you say, "I need some time alone," you are taking virtuous charge of your own resources, an action that is perfectly within your power. The other person's feelings about that, whether they feel hurt, angry, or rejected, are their own internal judgments to manage. A healthy relationship respects this distinction. A manipulator, however, refuses to accept it. Their dramatic response is a deliberate attempt to blur the lines of responsibility, making you feel accountable for their emotional turmoil. This refusal to honor your boundaries is at its core a profound disrespect for your sovereignty as a rational being. The Stoics believed that each individual possesses a spark of the divine logos, the capacity for reason and choice. This inner citadel is your inviolable space. Setting a boundary is like drawing a line around that citadel. It is a declaration of your self-ownership. A manipulator who frames this declaration as an attack is essentially claiming that your citadel's existence is an offense to them. They believe they have a right to unfettered access to your time, your energy, and your emotional life. Their reaction reveals an entitled mindset that sees your autonomy not as a sacred right, but as an obstacle to their control. The Stoic defense is to hold the line with calm resolve. This means recognizing that their emotional outburst is a choice they are making, a judgment they are applying to your action. You can respond with empathy without accepting the blame, perhaps by saying, "I understand you're feeling upset, but my need for quiet time is about my own well-being, not a reflection of my feelings for you." By calmly reiterating your boundary without being drawn into a debate about your character, you reaffirm your sovereignty. You demonstrate that your right to self-care is non-negotiable and that their attempt to punish you for it will not succeed in shifting the responsibility for their happiness onto your shoulders. The reach of emotional manipulation can extend far beyond words and feelings, often solidifying its grip through the most tangible of means, financial control. This red flag manifests when someone deliberately restricts your access to money, creates a situation of dependency, or actively punishes any move you make toward financial independence. It might begin subtly with a partner insisting on managing all the household finances to make things easier for you, only for you to later find yourself having to justify every small purchase or being given an allowance like a child. In other scenarios, a manipulator might encourage you to take on debt that binds you to them, or they might react with coldness or outright sabotage when you get a promotion or start a side business that strengthens your autonomy. The ultimate goal is always the same: to engineer a state of tangible powerlessness, making you feel that your basic security and freedom are contingent on their approval and continued presence in your life. This form of control is particularly devastating because it weaponizes our most practical needs for shelter, food, and safety. The anxiety it produces isn't abstract, it's a cold, sharp fear about survival itself. When you are financially trapped, the cost of leaving a toxic situation can feel impossibly high, and the manipulator knows this. They create a cage where the bars are made of bills and obligations, ensuring that even if your spirit wants to break free, the practical realities hold you back. This dynamic fosters a profound sense of helplessness, chipping away at your confidence and making you increasingly compliant, as the perceived risks of asserting yourself become not just emotional but existential. To understand why this tactic is so corrosive from a philosophical standpoint, we need to look at the nuanced Stoic view of wealth and externals. The Stoics famously classified things like money, health, and reputation as preferred indifference. This doesn't mean they are unimportant or that we shouldn't prefer to have them. Rather, it means that they are not inherently good or bad in the way that virtue is. A Stoic would agree that having financial resources is generally preferable to being in poverty, as money is a useful tool that can provide comfort, security, and the means to help others. However, and this is the crucial distinction, it is only a tool. Its moral value is determined entirely by how it is used. Wealth used to act with generosity, justice, and courage is a positive instrument for virtue. But wealth used as a weapon to dominate and control another human being is a perversion of its purpose, an external thing being misused to damage something internal and sacred, a person's freedom and dignity. Therefore, when a manipulator uses financial means to control you, they are committing a double offense. First, they are causing practical harm by restricting your autonomy. But on a deeper level, they are actively encouraging you to misunderstand the nature of true good. They want you to believe that your safety and worth are dependent on this external thing, the money they control, thereby hooking your happiness to a lever they hold. The Stoic response is to radically reorient this perspective. It involves recognizing that while financial security is a preferred thing to have, your freedom and virtue are absolutely essential. No amount of money is worth the price of your inner citadel. The Stoic ideal isn't poverty, but it is a fierce independence of spirit that understands real wealth is an inner state, the possession of a character that cannot be bought or sold. This mindset empowers you to see financial entrapment for what it is, a temporary, external constraint that, while difficult, does not have the power to define your worth or control your choices if you refuse to grant it that power. The path forward may require immense courage and practical planning, but it begins with the unshakable internal decision that your freedom is a higher good than financial comfort provided under conditions of control. This gradual erosion of your inner compass is perhaps the most profound violation of all, a quiet sabotage of the very faculty that defines your humanity. It begins with small, seemingly innocent dismissals. You express a vague unease about a new acquaintance, and they brush it off with a laugh, saying, "Oh, you're just being paranoid." They're perfectly nice. You share a doubt about a plan they've proposed, and you're told, "You always overthink everything, just go with the flow for once." Each time your intuition speaks up, it is met not with curiosity or respect, but with a label that renders it invalid, silly, irrational, hypersensitive. The message is repeated until it becomes an internal script. That small voice inside, the one that whispers a warning or raises a question, starts to feel like a liability. You begin to ignore its signals, convinced that your initial impressions are inherently flawed and cannot be trusted. You effectively become a stranger to yourself, learning to outsource your perception of reality to the person who is so confidently telling you that your own is broken. The ultimate goal of this insidious campaign is to sever your connection to what the Stoics considered your most divine attribute, your reason or logos. Epictetus taught that within each of us resides a fragment of the universal reason that governs the cosmos. This spark of divinity is our inner guide, our innate capacity to discern truth from falsehood and to navigate the world with wisdom. It is the foundation of our moral autonomy and our only true possession. A manipulator who systematically dismisses your intuition understands this on a fundamental level. They recognize that as long as you are connected to your own rational mind, you remain a sovereign individual capable of independent judgment and resistant to control. Their mission, therefore, whether conscious or not, is to extinguish that spark. By convincing you to distrust your own thoughts and feelings, they create a vacuum of authority, a void that they are all too ready to fill with their own narratives and interpretations. Your inner guide is silenced, and in its place you install their voice as the ultimate arbiter of what is real, what is right, and what you should feel. When this happens, you have not just lost trust in a few random hunches, you have surrendered the command center of your own life. Your hegemonicon, your ruling faculty, has been hijacked. Decisions that you once made with confidence now become sources of crippling anxiety because you feel you must check every thought with them first. Your emotional responses become filtered through their lens. You no longer feel sadness, you feel overly emotional. You no longer feel anger at a legitimate wrong, you feel irrationally angry. This dependency is the manipulator's ultimate victory. You are now trapped in a hall of mirrors they have constructed, where every reflection of yourself is distorted, and the only voice you can hear is theirs, telling you which reflection is real. Reclaiming your intuition is therefore the most essential act of Stoic defiance. It begins with the quiet, deliberate practice of turning your attention inward once more. The Stoics were masters of introspection, engaging in daily journaling and meditation not as a form of self-absorption, but as a disciplined audit of their own judgments. You can start by simply noticing the physical sensations that accompany your gut feelings, that tightness in your chest, that knot in your stomach, without immediately judging them as wrong. The next step is to grant your own impressions the same initial credibility you would grant a trusted friend's. When a doubt arises, instead of automatically dismissing it, you can pause and practice the Stoic discipline of assent. Ask yourself calmly and without panic, what is the evidence for this impression? Is my concern based on something I have observed? This is not about becoming suspicious or cynical. It is about re-establishing a respectful dialogue with your own mind. It is the philosophical work of cleaning the mirror of your perception, wiping away the fingerprints of another's manipulation until you can once again see your own reflection clearly. By doing so, you are not just spotting a red flag, you are relighting the divine spark within, reclaiming the birthright of your own reason, and taking back the keys to your inner citadel. This conditional framework for love and approval is one of the most damaging lessons a manipulator can teach, because it fundamentally warps your understanding of where your worth actually comes from. In this dynamic, affection isn't a steady, reliable presence. It's a currency that is earned and withdrawn based on your performance. When you comply with their wishes, when you make choices that align with their desires, you are rewarded with warmth, praise, and a sense of belonging. It feels like sunshine after a long winter, But the moment you step out of line, when you express a differing opinion, prioritize a need of your own, or simply fail to meet an unspoken expectation, that warmth vanishes instantly, replaced by coldness, criticism, or withdrawal. You are left out in the emotional cold, shivering and confused, desperately trying to figure out what you did wrong to lose the sun. This constant pendulum swing between reward and punishment is a powerful conditioning tool. It trains you to believe that your access to love and safety is entirely contingent on your ability to please another person, making their approval the central organizing principle of your life. This stands in the starkest possible contrast to the psychological concept of unconditional positive regard, which is the bedrock of healthy relationships. Unconditional positive regard means valuing and accepting a person for who they are intrinsically, not for what they do for you. It's the understanding that a person's worth is constant, even when you disagree with their choices or are disappointed by their actions. A manipulator offers the exact opposite, a relationship of intensely conditional regard. Their love is not a gift, it is a payment for services rendered. This creates a deep-seated anxiety because you can never truly relax or be your authentic self. You live in fear of the next misstep that will cause this fragile connection to shatter, so you become hyper-vigilant, constantly monitoring your behavior to ensure it continues to merit the affection you crave. Your identity slowly molds itself to fit the shape of their expectations, and your own authentic desires and personality traits are suppressed because they represent a risk too great to take. This entire manipulative structure is built upon a profound lie about human value, a lie that Stoic philosophy exists to dismantle. The Stoics drew an unbreakable line between what is truly good virtue or moral character and what they called preferred indifference, everything else, including our reputation, our wealth, and crucially, the approval and affection of other people. For a Stoic, your worth is not something that can be given or taken away by anyone. It is inherent in your capacity for reason and your potential to act with wisdom, justice, courage, and self-discipline. Your value is rooted in your character, the one thing that is always within your control to cultivate, regardless of external circumstances. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that his worth was not determined by the cheers of the crowd or the flattery of courtiers, but by the quality of his own thoughts and actions. To base your self-esteem on the fluctuating approval of a manipulator is, from a Stoic perspective, to build your house on the edge of a cliff, vulnerable to every changing wind. Therefore, when someone loves you conditionally, they are not just being difficult, they are actively promoting a false and dangerous philosophy of value. They are teaching you that your goodness is external and transactional, something you must earn over and over again. They want you to believe that your virtue is worthless unless it is validated by their personal seal of approval. The Stoic defense is to internalize the radical truth that your worth is inherent and non-negotiable. It means learning to derive your sense of security, not from the manipulator's intermittent rewards, but from your own unwavering commitment to acting with integrity. When you feel the cold withdrawal of their affection after a disagreement, instead of panicking and scrambling to win it back, the Stoic practice is to turn inward and ask, did I act according to my principles? Was my intention just? If the answer is yes, then you have succeeded in the only game that truly matters. You can then observe their withdrawal not as a punishment you deserve, but as their choice, an external event that says nothing about your inherent value. This inner shift is how you break the conditioning. You stop chasing the sunshine they dangle before you and learn to generate your own warmth from the steady fire of your own virtue, a fire that no one else has the power to extinguish. Perhaps one of the most profound betrayals occurs when a sanctuary of trust is deliberately turned into a weapons depot. This is the red flag of someone using your past against you. Think of those moments of vulnerability when you shared a story of a past failure, a period of insecurity, or a mistake you deeply regret. You offered these confidences as a gift of trust, a way to be fully seen by another person. A manipulator, however, accepts this gift only to store it away for future use. Then, during a disagreement or a moment when they feel their control is challenged, they reach into this private arsenal. An argument about a current issue suddenly detours into a brutal recitation of your old wounds. "Well, no wonder you're being so irrational about this," they might say. "It's just like that time you failed so spectacularly at your old job." Or, "You're one to talk about responsibility, given how you messed things up with your family years ago." The subject is no longer the present problem. It's your historic inadequacy, wielded as definitive proof that your current feelings or perspective are invalid. The psychological damage this inflicts is immense and multifaceted. First, it utterly shatters the foundation of safety necessary for any healthy connection. You learn, in the most painful way possible, that your vulnerability is not safe with this person. The natural consequence is to build emotional walls, to stop sharing your inner world for fear that any admission of imperfection will be catalogued and later used as ammunition. This leads to a profound sense of isolation, even within the relationship. Second, it effectively shuts down any possibility of resolving the actual conflict at hand. The manipulator has changed the game from a discussion about a specific behavior to a character assassination based on historical evidence. You are forced to abandon your point and defend your entire life story, a battle you can never win because the facts of the past are unchangeable. This leaves you feeling defeated, shamed, and powerless in the present. From a Stoic perspective, this tactic represents a grievous violation of two core principles: justice and the focused importance of the present moment. The virtue of justice for the Stoics was about righteousness in our dealings with others, treating them with fairness, honesty, and integrity. To take a person's confidential admission and twist it into a public or private humiliation is a profound act of injustice. It is a betrayal of the fundamental social contract that allows for human connection and growth. Furthermore, it completely disregards the Stoic teaching on time. The past is in the realm of the indifference. It is fixed and unchangeable. As Marcus Aurelius reflected, the past is nothing but a path of facts that we cannot alter. The only moment we truly possess, the only moment in which we can exercise our reason and virtue, is the present. A Stoic learns from the past, extracting wisdom from mistakes, but they do not dwell there or allow it to chain them. They bring those lessons into the now to inform better choices. A manipulator, by contrast, actively dwells in the past to control the present. They understand that a past mistake is an unchallengeable fact, and by anchoring you to it, they can drown your present moment arguments in a sea of old shame. Their goal is to make you feel that you are perpetually defined by your errors, that you haven't earned the right to an opinion or a boundary because of something you did long ago. This is the ultimate corruption of history, using it not as a teacher but as a jailer. The Stoic defense against this is to calmly but firmly refuse to be dragged into the past. When they launch a historical attack, the most powerful response is to gently guide the conversation back to the present issue. You might say, "I acknowledge that happened in the past and I've learned from it. Right now, we are discussing what happened this morning." This requires immense emotional discipline, as the bait to engage in a defensive struggle about your history is powerful. But by holding the line, you reclaim the only ground that matters, the present moment where your virtue and your choices reside. You demonstrate that you will not be tried for crimes you have already served the sentence for, and that your worth today is not negated by the person you once were. Another unmistakable signal that you are dealing with a manipulative character is a persistent atmosphere of crisis, a life that seems to be a never-ending series of emergencies, conflicts, and urgent problems. It's as if this person is a magnet for drama, or more accurately, its chief architect. There is always a fire to put out, a misunderstanding that has blown out of proportion, or a personal catastrophe that demands your immediate and total attention. You might notice that periods of calm and quiet are remarkably short-lived, often interrupted by a sudden text or phone call detailing the latest upheaval. This continuous state of high alert is not a coincidence. It is a carefully managed environment, and you are being cast in the role of the permanent first responder. The psychological effect of this constant chaos is a subtle but powerful form of mental hijacking. When you are perpetually dealing with someone else's emergencies, your own mind has no opportunity to rest, reflect, or engage in calm assessment. Your cognitive resources are constantly being diverted to managing the latest crisis, leaving you emotionally frayed and mentally exhausted. This state of reactivity is precisely what the manipulator desires. A person who is emotionally reactive is not thinking clearly. They are operating on impulse, fatigue, and a desperate desire to restore peace. In this vulnerable state, you are far more likely to agree to unreasonable demands, overlook red flags, and make decisions you would never make with a clear and rested mind. The chaos acts as a smokescreen, obscuring the manipulator's true intentions and preventing you from seeing the larger, more troubling pattern of their behavior. This relentless drama stands in direct opposition to a profound Stoic ideal known as euthymia, which translates to tranquility or a soul that is in good spirits. The Stoics sought a life of inner and outer order, an existence free from unnecessary turmoil and emotional turbulence. Seneca described it as believing in yourself and walking a steady path, not being thrown off course by the chaotic swirl of external events. For the Stoics, living in accordance with nature and reason meant cultivating a simple, orderly life where the mind could function with clarity and purpose. It was about reducing the noise so that the signal of virtue could be heard. A manipulator who thrives on drama is actively rebelling against this entire philosophy. They are not interested in order, they are agents of chaos because chaos is the element in which control thrives. The manipulator understands that a calm, reflective mind is their greatest adversary. A mind at peace can see things for what they are. It can assess a situation logically, recognize patterns of manipulation, and set firm boundaries. Chaos, therefore, becomes a strategic weapon. By keeping you constantly off balance and emotionally engaged in their personal soap opera, they ensure you never have the quiet mental space necessary to ask the most dangerous question: is this person the source of all these problems? The drama becomes the entire landscape of your relationship, making it impossible to step back and view the terrain from a distance. The Stoic defense against this tactic is a conscious and deliberate commitment to cultivating your own euthymia. This begins with recognizing that not every emergency is yours to solve. It involves practicing the discipline of distinguishing between what is truly your responsibility and what is merely someone else's chaotic energy being dumped at your feet. When the next crisis arrives, instead of immediately jumping into the fray, you create a moment of pause. You might ask yourself, is this my problem to fix? Is my involvement truly necessary, or am I being recruited to manage someone else's emotional unraveling? By choosing to not engage in every drama, you are not being callous. You are protecting your inner citadel from the siege of chaos. You reclaim your right to a quiet mind, and in that quiet, you regain the power to see the manipulator's strategy for what it is: a desperate attempt to prevent you from ever finding the clarity that would set you free. Then there's the compliment that feels more like a small, sharp sting, the kind of remark that leaves you slightly unsettled long after it's been delivered. This is the backhanded compliment, a masterful blend of praise and insult that serves to elevate the speaker while keeping you in a state of mild but persistent insecurity. On the surface, it sounds like a positive observation, but just beneath lies a subtle, often demeaning comparison or assumption. Classic examples include phrases like, "You clean up so nicely, I hardly recognized you," which implies your usual state is somewhat lacking, or "You're so articulate for someone your age," which carries the condescending suggestion that your age group is typically inarticulate. The most damaging part is the plausible deniability. If you object, you're accused of misinterpreting a kind gesture or being unable to accept a compliment, effectively turning your justified discomfort into another one of your perceived flaws. The psychological mechanism at work here is a clever power play. By offering a compliment that is simultaneously a critique, the manipulator creates a confusing double bind. You receive a small dose of validation which creates a flicker of positive feeling, but it is immediately undercut by an implicit message of your inferiority. You're left feeling grateful for the praise yet vaguely insulted, unable to fully embrace the positive without also accepting the negative judgment embedded within it. This constant, low-grade insecurity makes you more susceptible to the manipulator's influence, as you may find yourself striving to earn a pure, unambiguous compliment from them, a goal they will carefully ensure you never quite reach. Your sense of self-worth becomes partially dependent on their approval, but it's an approval that is always delivered with a qualifier, a reminder that you are not quite enough on your own terms. This tactic stands in stark opposition to the Stoic virtue of sincerity, or what the ancients would have called honesty and simplicity of character. A person of genuine virtue understands that communication should be a clear channel for truth, not a labyrinth of hidden barbs. When they offer praise, it is straightforward and wholehearted, meant to uplift without any ulterior motive. When they offer criticism, it is constructive and offered with the honest intention of helping the other person improve. There is no need for the veiled insult, the subtle dig that allows the speaker to feel superior while maintaining a facade of kindness. The backhanded compliment is at its core an act of deceit. It is a performance of generosity that conceals a desire to undermine, revealing a character that lacks the courage to be directly honest and instead relies on passive-aggressive manipulation to assert dominance. From a Stoic perspective, the appropriate response to such a comment is not to engage in a debate about the speaker's intentions, which are deliberately shrouded. Instead, it is to practice the discipline of correctly assessing the impression. When you receive a backhanded compliment, you can mentally deconstruct it. Acknowledge the small kernel of praise for what it is, but then clearly identify the larger, implied insult. See it not as a truthful statement about you, but as a revelation of the speaker's need to position themselves above you. The Stoic sage would likely meet such a remark with calm indifference, recognizing that their self-worth is not contingent on the twisted praise of others. They might even respond with a simple, unflinching "thank you," refusing to acknowledge the hidden hook or gently reflect the comment back with "that's an interesting way to put it," which exposes the oddity of the phrasing without escalating conflict. By refusing to be thrown off balance by this mixed message, you demonstrate that your inner citadel is secure. Your value is determined by your own virtuous actions, not by the conditional, contradictory evaluations of someone who uses language not to connect but to control. And here we come to a red flag that doesn't come from the manipulator at all, but from within your own mind, the quiet, persistent habit of making excuses for their behavior. This is the moment you catch yourself telling a friend, "Oh, he didn't mean it that way, he's just under a lot of stress at work," or privately reassuring yourself, "She's not usually like this, she's just going through a tough time." On the surface, it feels like compassion, a generous attempt to see the best in someone. But if you listen closely, it has a different sound. The sound of your own rational mind straining to paper over a crack in your reality. You are not offering understanding, you are constructing a narrative to explain away the undeniable evidence of your own discomfort. This internal justification is a powerful coping mechanism for a specific kind of psychological pain known as cognitive dissonance, the mental anguish that arises when you hold two conflicting beliefs. In this case, the conflict is between the belief that this person cares for you and the evidence that they are consistently causing you harm. To resolve the tension, your mind opts for the less painful path. it starts to reframe the harm, explaining it away until it becomes more palatable, until it can be made to fit the story you need to believe. This self-deception, however well-intentioned, has a devastating consequence. It paralyzes you. By constantly justifying their actions, you effectively remove their responsibility and place it on external circumstances. The problem is no longer their choice to treat you poorly. The problem becomes their job, their childhood, their bad day. This illusion lets you off the hook too, sparing you the terrifying but necessary task of confronting the truth of your situation. But in doing so, it traps you. If the cause of the mistreatment is always something temporary and outside their control, then there is no problem to solve, only a situation to endure. You become a passive bystander in your own life, waiting for the external conditions to change so that the person you love can finally become the person you believe them to be. This waiting can last a lifetime. This habit stands in direct opposition to a foundational Stoic practice, the evening reflection. The Stoics, particularly Seneca, advocated for a rigorous end-of-day review. This wasn't a time for vague reminiscing. It was a structured, honest audit of the day's events. You would ask yourself questions like, what did I do wrong? What duties did I neglect? How could I have acted better? The goal was relentless self-honesty, a commitment to seeing your own actions and the actions of those around you with crystal clarity, free from the fog of justification. Making excuses for someone else's bad behavior is a profound failure of this practice. It is the very opposite of honest assessment. When you say, "He only said that because he was tired," you are not reporting an objective fact. You are interpreting an event through a filter designed to minimize your own pain. You are allowing a preferred narrative to override the raw data of your experience. The Stoic alternative is to courageously separate the person's action from your invented explanation for it. Instead of saying, "She was cruel because she's insecure," you train yourself to state the bare observation, "She made a cruel comment." The first statement is a theory, a story you've created to make the cruelty make sense. The second is an indisputable fact. By sticking to the facts, you prevent yourself from getting lost in a labyrinth of excuses. This allows you to ask the only question that truly matters from a Stoic perspective. Given that this action occurred, what is the virtuous way for me to respond? The answer will never be, make an excuse for it. The virtuous response might be to calmly address the action, to set a boundary around it, or, if it is part of a persistent pattern, to reconsider the relationship's place in your life. But you can only arrive at that clear-eyed response if you first stop explaining the behavior away. This practice of refusing to excuse is not an act of cold-hearted judgment. It is the ultimate act of self-respect. It is the decision to trust the evidence of your own experience over the comforting fictions your mind creates to avoid a painful truth. It is how you reclaim your agency from the grip of cognitive dissonance and start making choices based on what is real, rather than on what you wish were real. This final red flag represents the ultimate inversion of responsibility, a masterstroke of emotional manipulation where the manipulator holds you accountable for their own internal world. The logic they present is deceptively simple yet profoundly distorting. If they become enraged, it is because you made them angry. If they spiral into jealousy, it is because you caused it by speaking to a colleague. Their outbursts of sadness, their fits of anxiety, their entire emotional landscape is framed not as their own reaction to events, but as a direct and unavoidable consequence of your actions. In this twisted equation, you are cast as the puppeteer of their feelings, responsible for pulling the strings that control their happiness or misery, while they pose as the helpless victim of your emotional engineering. This is a complete and total abdication of personal responsibility, a refusal to acknowledge the most fundamental truth of human psychology, that we are the authors of our own emotional responses. The psychological toll of accepting this false premise is immense. When you internalize the belief that you are the cause of another person's pain, you enter a state of constant, hyper-vigilant policing of your own behavior. You begin to walk on eggshells, not just to avoid conflict, but to prevent what you now believe will be a catastrophic emotional reaction for which you will be blamed. Your life becomes a minefield, and every word, every action, every glance is scrutinized for its potential to trigger an explosion. This self-censorship is exhausting and soul-crushing, as you are forced to contort your authentic self into a shape that you hope will maintain peace. The manipulator, in turn, is granted a license for any behavior. Their tantrums, their coldness, their cruelty are all justified because in their narrative you forced their hand. This dynamic creates a perfect prison where your freedom is sacrificed to manage emotions that are not yours to manage. This final red flag strikes at the very heart of the single most important principle in Stoic philosophy, the dichotomy of control. Epictetus began his Enchiridion with the stark and liberating declaration that some things are within our power and some are not. Within our power are our own opinions, impulses, desires, and aversions essentially, our judgments and the actions that spring from them. Everything else, including our body, our property, our reputation, and critically, the actions and opinions of other people, lies outside our control. Our emotions, or passions as the Stoics called them, reside in a crucial middle ground. We cannot directly control the initial, automatic impression that arises in us, the flash of fear, the surge of anger. But we have absolute sovereignty over what happens next, our assent to that impression. We can choose whether to accept the impression as true and act on it, or to reject it as a distorted signal and let it pass. This moment of choice is where our freedom and our virtue reside. No external event, and certainly no other person, can force us to give our assent. They cannot make us feel anything. They can only present us with an impression to which we ourselves assign meaning and power. Therefore, when a manipulator blames you for their reaction, they are committing the ultimate philosophical error. They are projecting onto you a power you simply do not possess, the power to control their inner citadel, while simultaneously refusing the one power they absolutely do possess, the power to govern their own judgments and responses. They are, in effect, trying to hand you the keys to their mind while complaining that you are a bad driver. This is more than just a personal failing. It is a rejection of the core Stoic understanding of human agency. It is a demand to live in a world where they are not the captains of their own soul, but permanent passengers who get to blame the captain for every storm. The Stoic response to this is not to argue about who is at fault, but to calmly and firmly reassert the boundaries of control. You must recognize that their emotional state is their own responsibility, a part of their inner kingdom that you cannot and should not seek to rule. When they say, "You made me so angry," the Stoic-influenced reply is not a defensive, "No, I didn't," but a principled and quiet acknowledgement of reality. "I hear that you are feeling angry. My action was my own, but your anger is your reaction to it, and that is yours to manage." This statement is not cold or unsympathetic, it is profoundly respectful. It respects their capacity as an adult human being to handle their own emotions, and it respects your own boundaries by refusing to accept a burden that was never yours to carry. By holding this line, you accomplish two vital things. You protect your own peace from the tyranny of their emotional mismanagement, and you offer them, perhaps for the first time, an invitation to finally grow up and take ownership of the one thing in this life that is truly theirs, their own mind. And so we reach the end of our exploration, having journeyed through 25 distinct red flags that signal emotional manipulation. From the dizzying highs and lows of the love bomb and devalue cycle to the quiet, soul-crushing habit of making excuses for someone's behavior, each sign serves as a crucial marker on a path that leads away from your own peace of mind. Recognizing these patterns is not an exercise in paranoia. It is the essential first step in a profound act of reclamation. It is the moment you choose to reclaim your emotional freedom, your mental sovereignty, and your right to a life guided by your own reason and virtue. This awareness is the very foundation upon which Stoic resilience is built. Stoicism, as we've seen, offers so much more than a philosophy of passive endurance. It provides a proactive, powerful framework for navigating the complexities of human relationships. It equips you with a lens of clarity to see toxic dynamics for what they are, not as personal failings on your part, but as external assaults on your inner citadel. The principles of the dichotomy of control, the pursuit of virtue, and the unwavering trust in your own rational mind are not abstract ideas. They are practical tools for disengaging from these manipulative games. They teach you that your worth is inherent and cannot be diminished by another's conditional treatment, and that your primary duty is to protect the sanctity of your own mind. As you reflect on what we've discussed, I encourage you to look inward and consider your own connections. Trust that subtle voice of intuition if it whispered in recognition as we went through these warning signs. That feeling of unease, that sense of being drained, that quiet confusion, these are not signs of your weakness. They are signals from your deepest self, your inner guide, trying to alert you to a threat. Honoring that intuition is the beginning of practicing Stoic courage in your daily life. Therefore, let this be a powerful call to action. Make a conscious decision to prioritize your inner citadel above all else. Guard your peace of mind with the fierce determination of a Stoic sentinel. Choose to cultivate relationships that respect your boundaries, celebrate your autonomy, and encourage your growth, while having the strength to re-evaluate or distance yourself from those that consistently demand the sacrifice of your tranquility. Your virtue, your character, your integrity, your rational mind is your most precious possession. Do not hand over the keys to anyone. Now, I would love to hear from you. Which of these 25 red flags resonated most deeply with your own experiences? Was it the chilling effect of gaslighting, the exhausting cycle of moving goalposts, or the painful realization of conditional love? Sharing your story in the comments below can be a powerful way to solidify your own understanding and offer support to others on a similar journey. If you found this guide helpful in your pursuit of a wiser, more resilient life, please subscribe to the channel. We are dedicated to bringing you more practical Stoic wisdom that you can use to navigate the challenges of modern life. Thank you for watching, and remember, the power to build an unshakable peace has always been and will always be within you.